You're sitting across from someone and you can feel it, the sense that there's more behind their words than what they're saying out loud, more beneath the polite answers, the practiced smile, the surface-level conversation. And in moments like this, most people either guess, assume, or retreat into small talk, because truly understanding another human being feels mysterious, even risky. But the Stoics never believed wisdom was hidden in complexity. They believed it was found in clarity, attention, and asking the right questions at the right time. And this is where our journey begins, not with tricks, not with manipulation, but with presence. Because reading someone's mind is not about invading their privacy. It's about creating a space so honest and calm that they feel safe enough to reveal themselves without realizing they are doing it. And here is the truth most people miss. Human beings are not as closed off as they appear. They are guarded, yes, but they are also deeply hungry to be understood, to feel seen without being judged. And when that hunger meets genuine curiosity instead of ego, walls soften, defenses lower, and real connection becomes possible. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this more evident than in our relationships, where we assume motives, project fears, and misread intentions simply because we never slow down enough to truly ask. The Stoic path does not begin with control over others. It begins with control over ourselves, especially our need to impress, to dominate, or to extract information for advantage. Instead, it teaches us to observe calmly, to listen fully, and to speak with purpose. And that is why the questions you are about to learn are not clever in a flashy way. They are clever in a quiet way. The way a key is clever when it fits a lock perfectly without force. The way water is clever when it shapes stone through patience rather than pressure. Socrates famously urged us to know ourselves, but he also demonstrated that understanding others is inseparable from wisdom, because every human interaction is a mirror, reflecting values, fears, hopes, and unresolved conflicts. And the first question we will explore may sound simple, almost casual, but simplicity is often where truth hides best. The question is this: what's been the highlight of your week so far? On the surface, it feels harmless, even friendly, but psychologically it does something profound. It bypasses status, role, and performance and goes straight to energy. It asks not what you do, but what lights you up. And in that answer, people reveal their priorities without realizing it. Some speak about achievement, others about connection, others about service, solitude, creativity, or growth. And in a single moment, you see what they orient their life around, what they notice, what they remember, what they cherish. I once asked this question in a setting where everyone expected professional posturing, and instead of hearing about wins and metrics, the person paused, smiled, and spoke about helping someone who couldn't help themselves. And in that pause, in that smile, I learned more about their character than any resume could ever show. The Stoics taught that a good life is not measured by applause, but by alignment with values. And this question quietly reveals that alignment. But what matters just as much as the answer is how it is delivered. Watch their posture, their tone, the subtle shift in their presence. Because when people talk about what matters, their body tells the truth, even if their words try to stay modest. And when someone struggles to answer, that too is information. It may signal exhaustion, disconnection, or a life lived on autopilot, not as a flaw, but as a state of being. And the Stoic does not judge states. The Stoic observes them, because observation without judgment is the foundation of understanding. This question also teaches you something about yourself, because when you ask it sincerely, you are training your mind to look for meaning instead of noise, substance instead of performance. And this is critical, because you cannot understand others deeply if you are addicted to surface validation yourself. The Stoic approach to conversation is not to extract, but to invite, not to corner, but to open. And this first question sets the tone. It says without saying it, I'm here to listen, not to compete. And in a world where most people are waiting to speak, that alone makes you rare. But this is only the beginning, because energy reveals what people love, not how they grow. And growth, the ability to change one's mind, to evolve, to admit past error without shame, is where true character begins to show itself. And that is exactly where the next question leads, deeper, quieter, and far more revealing than most people are prepared for. Once you understand what energizes someone, the next layer of truth lies not in their successes, but in their willingness to outgrow their past. Because character is not defined by consistency alone, it is defined by conscious evolution. And this is where the second question quietly reveals more than most people intend. The question is simple but disarming. What's something you used to believe that you don't believe anymore? And the moment it lands, you can feel the shift. Because this is not a question about opinion, it is a question about humility, about growth, about whether a person sees life as a fixed identity to defend or a process to participate in. Many people are comfortable talking about what they believe. Far fewer are comfortable talking about what they had to let go of. And yet the Stoics understood that wisdom begins precisely there, at the edge where certainty dissolves into learning. When someone answers this question honestly, they reveal how they handle being wrong, how they integrate new information, and whether their ego is rigid or flexible. A person who can calmly say, I used to think this, but I've learned otherwise, is a person who can adapt under pressure, accept feedback without collapse, and grow without resentment. And those traits matter far more in life than raw intelligence or confidence. I once asked this question in a professional setting where everyone was polished and impressive, and one candidate spoke openly about how they once believed working longer hours meant being more valuable, only to realize later that clarity, rest, and focus created better outcomes. And in that moment I saw not weakness but maturity, because only someone secure in themselves can revise their beliefs without self-attack. Contrast that with someone who struggles to answer, who insists they've always been right, always known, always seen clearly. That resistance often signals fear, not strength, because the unwillingness to admit growth is often the unwillingness to confront one's own limitations. And Stoicism teaches us that limitations acknowledged become tools, while limitations denied become traps. Pay close attention, not just to what belief they mention, but how they frame the change. Do they speak with bitterness, shame, curiosity, or gratitude? Someone who says I was stupid back then may still be harsh with themselves. Someone who says I learned something important has integrated the lesson. And integration is what allows wisdom to compound over time. This question also reveals the environment a person comes from. Those who have been allowed to grow will speak freely. Those who were punished for being wrong may hesitate, not because they lack insight, but because they learned that changing one's mind was unsafe. And this matters deeply in relationships, because growth is inevitable. Life will demand adaptation, beliefs about work, love, identity, and meaning will be tested. And if someone cannot revise their thinking, they will resist reality instead, causing unnecessary suffering for themselves and those around them. Stoic philosophy never asked us to cling to ideas. It asked us to align with nature and reason evolves as understanding deepens. Another layer of this question lies in how specific the answer is. Vague responses often signal unexamined living, while specific stories signal reflection. When someone can trace how a belief changed through experience, observation, or consequence, you are speaking to someone who learns from life rather than merely enduring it. This question also shows how someone handles disagreement, because a person who has changed before is less threatened by opposing views. They don't need to dominate conversations or protect fragile certainties. They can listen, weigh, and respond thoughtfully, which makes them far easier to trust in moments of conflict, moments where cooperation matters more than ego. And there is something else subtle but powerful here. People tend to reveal what once hurt them through the beliefs they've abandoned. Someone who says, "I used to believe asking for help was weakness," often learned that lesson through exhaustion or isolation. Someone who says, "I used to believe pleasing everyone mattered," may have paid a heavy emotional price. And understanding this gives you empathy without prying, insight without intrusion. The Stoic does not rush to fix, judge, or advise. The Stoic observes patterns and responds with proportion, and this question gives you the pattern, but it also invites self-reflection, because every time you ask it, you are silently asking yourself the same thing. What have I outgrown? What am I still clinging to out of habit or fear? And this mutual reflection creates an atmosphere of equality, not interrogation. When used sincerely, this question builds trust because it signals that growth is welcome here, that change is not a flaw, and that being human means being unfinished. But while growth reveals adaptability, it does not yet reveal values. It shows how someone changes, not what they stand for at their core. And for that, we must move one level deeper, to the question that quietly exposes what someone believes the world needs most. And why? After understanding what energizes someone and how they've grown, the next layer goes even deeper, because now we are no longer talking about their past or their habits. We are uncovering their moral compass, the quiet standards by which they judge human behavior, often without realizing it themselves. And this is where the third question becomes so powerful. If you could change one thing about how people treat each other, what would it be? This question bypasses defenses because it feels abstract, almost philosophical, yet it reaches straight into lived experience, because people do not form values in a vacuum. They form them in response to pain, disappointment, admiration, and longing. When someone answers this, they are revealing what they have suffered from, what they have lacked, and what they believe would heal the world if it were practiced more widely. And that is not theory. That is personal history translated into principle. I once asked this question in a quiet conversation with someone who appeared calm and successful, and without hesitation they said, "I wish people would stop making promises they don't intend to keep." There was no anger in their voice, just certainty. And in that moment I understood that reliability was not a preference for them. It was a wound, a lesson learned through broken trust, through situations where words failed to align with actions, and later, in every collaboration we shared, that value revealed itself again and again. They showed up early, followed through, communicated clearly, because for them, integrity was not optional, it was the foundation of peace. And that is the pattern this question reveals. People who answer with kindness often learned its absence early. People who answer with honesty have likely been misled. People who answer with patience have often been rushed or misunderstood. And people who answer with respect have often felt diminished. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught that we are shaped not by events, but by our judgments of those events. And this question exposes those judgments, not in the form of complaint, but in the form of ideals. Pay attention to whether their answer focuses on adding something to the world or removing something from it. Someone who says, "I wish people were more compassionate," is oriented toward creation. Someone who says, "I wish people would stop lying," is oriented toward correction. Neither is wrong, but they reveal different temperaments. One seeks to heal, the other seeks to protect, and both approaches will shape how that person behaves in conflict, intimacy, and leadership. Another layer lies in the scope of their answer. Some people focus on individual interactions, listening, honesty, empathy, while others speak about systems, fairness, justice, equality. And this reveals how they perceive responsibility, whether they believe change begins with the self or with structure. Again, not right or wrong, but revealing. And then there is the emotional tone. Some answers carry frustration, others hope, others resignation. Someone who says, "I wish people would be more patient," spoken softly, may be revealing exhaustion. Someone who says it sharply may be revealing anger. And someone who says it calmly may be revealing acceptance paired with preference. And this matters because emotional tone tells you how healed the value is, whether it has been integrated or is still raw. Stoic wisdom does not demand the absence of values. It demands clarity about them, and clarity allows proportion. When you understand what someone believes the world is missing, you understand what they are likely to demand in relationships. Someone who values honesty will struggle in environments of ambiguity. Someone who values harmony will avoid constant confrontation. Someone who values autonomy will resist control, and knowing this allows you to meet people where they are, instead of expecting them to respond as you would. This question also reveals how they see humanity itself, optimistically or pessimistically. Some people believe people are capable but misguided. Others believe people are selfish and need restraint. These beliefs will influence how they parent, lead, love, and forgive. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people act poorly out of ignorance, not malice, and that belief shaped his restraint. Someone who answers this question with empathy often shares that Stoic outlook. Someone who answers with bitterness may still be carrying unresolved injury. And again, this is not for judgment, it is for understanding, because understanding allows you to choose your level of closeness wisely, and perhaps the most subtle insight comes from what they don't mention. If someone never references kindness, empathy, or respect, it may indicate they have rarely experienced them or rarely prioritized them. If someone never mentions responsibility or honesty, it may indicate comfort with flexibility. And these omissions are not accusations, they are signals. This question reveals the invisible contract they carry into every relationship. What they believe is owed, what they believe is missing, and what they believe is sacred. But even values are tested under pressure. Ideals are easy to state when life is calm. The true measure comes when circumstances disrupt comfort. And that is why the next question matters so deeply, because it reveals who they become when they act against their own expectations, when life pulls them out of character and forces a choice. Once you understand what energizes someone, how they grow, and what values they believe the world is missing, the next layer reveals something far more predictive than personality or ideals. It reveals behavior under disruption, because character is not proven when life is comfortable. It is revealed when a person acts against their own expectations. And that is why the fourth question cuts so cleanly. What's a decision you made that surprised even yourself? This question is not about success or failure. It is about self-awareness, courage, and the capacity to step beyond a familiar identity. When someone answers it honestly, they are showing you the edge of who they thought they were and the moment they crossed it. And that edge is where growth lives. I once asked this question in a group setting where everyone seemed predictable, and a quiet colleague who rarely spoke shared that she had once left a secure corporate role to start a small creative venture with no guarantee of success. She spoke calmly, without drama, but the room shifted, because the story revealed something her daily behavior did not: courage, independence, and a willingness to trust her own judgment when it mattered most. And in that moment I understood that the version of her I saw at work was not the full person. It was simply the context she was operating within. This is why the question matters. It reveals potential, not performance. The Stoics believe that people are not defined by roles but by choices, and this question reveals the choices that disrupted comfort, routine, or identity. Pay attention to whether the surprise came from acting bravely, acting compassionately, or acting decisively. Someone who surprised themselves by speaking up reveals latent courage. Someone who surprised themselves by walking away reveals self-respect. Someone who surprised themselves by committing deeply reveals capacity for loyalty. These are not trivial traits. They determine how someone will behave when circumstances demand more than habit. Notice also whether the decision was driven by internal conviction or external pressure. Internal surprises reveal self-trust. External surprises reveal adaptability. Both matter, but they shape different kinds of resilience. Someone who acts from internal conviction may resist control but remain steady under chaos. Someone who adapts to external change may thrive in uncertainty but struggle with boundaries. Neither is superior, but both are revealing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the impediment to action advances action, and in these stories, the impediment is often fear, doubt, or expectation. When someone describes the moment they acted anyway, they are revealing how they negotiate fear, whether they freeze, rationalize, or move forward. This matters deeply in relationships, because life will create moments where fear appears without invitation, illness, loss, conflict, responsibility, and you will want to know how the person beside you responds when their script breaks. Another layer of this question lies in emotional framing. Do they speak of the decision with pride, regret, relief, or curiosity? Pride suggests integration. Regret suggests unresolved tension. Relief suggests alignment. Curiosity suggests openness. Again, not judgment, but insight. Someone who carries regret may still be processing. Someone who carries curiosity may be actively evolving, and both will require different forms of understanding. The content of the decision also reveals scale. Some people surprise themselves with quiet acts, forgiving someone, asking for help, choosing rest, while others surprise themselves with visible acts, moving countries, changing careers, ending relationships. Scale does not equal significance. A quiet decision can represent just as much internal revolution as a dramatic one. The Stoics valued internal victories above external displays, because inner discipline outlasts circumstance. This question also exposes how tightly someone clings to identity. Someone who says nothing has ever surprised them may be consistent, but they may also be confined by a narrow self-image. Someone who can name moments of self-surprise is someone who allows themselves to be more than one version of who they are, and that flexibility is a powerful indicator of long-term growth, especially in relationships that require adaptation over time, because people who cannot surprise themselves often resist change in others as well. And there is something else subtle here. People tend to surprise themselves when they act in alignment with values they had ignored: creativity, compassion, autonomy, honesty. And when you hear their story, you are hearing the voice of those values breaking through. This tells you not only who they were, but who they are becoming, and becoming matters more than being. Stoicism is not about static virtue. It is about continual alignment with reason and nature. And nature is movement. This question shows you whether someone is moving consciously or unconsciously, whether they notice their own evolution or live on autopilot. And when you understand how someone handles self-surprise, you understand how they will handle uncertainty, how they will respond when plans collapse, when roles shift, when life demands a version of them they have not rehearsed. But even courage and adaptability are not the final layer, because beneath action lies desire, beneath choice lies longing, and the final question reaches that deepest layer, the one most people censor before it ever reaches language. When you want to understand someone at the deepest level, deeper than personality, deeper than habits, deeper than even values, you must look at what remains when fear is removed, because fear edits truth. And that is exactly why the fifth question is so revealing. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? This question strips away hesitation, social conditioning, and self-censorship. And what surfaces is not fantasy, it is direction. It reveals where their soul naturally points when no obstacle stands in the way. And that direction explains almost everything about how they move through life. When people answer this question honestly, they are not describing a plan, they are confessing a longing. And longings are far more predictive than goals. I once asked this question to a friend who appeared highly successful but perpetually restless. Without hesitation, she said she would open a small counseling center for teenagers who felt lost, not to become famous, not to make money, but to give them a place to speak without being corrected or judged. Her voice changed as she spoke, slower, steadier, alive. And in that moment it was obvious that her dissatisfaction was not laziness or confusion, it was misalignment. Her daily life was pointing one way while her inner compass pointed another. 6 months later, she took her first step toward that path, not because the fear disappeared, but because the desire finally outweighed it. This question reveals that imbalance clearly. The Stoics understood that suffering often comes not from hardship, but from living against one's nature. And nature expresses itself through desire, not impulse, but sustained longing. Notice what people choose when failure is impossible. Some choose creation, writing, art, building something meaningful, which reveals a need for expression and legacy. Others choose service, helping, healing, teaching, which reveals a need for contribution and impact. Some choose freedom, travel, exploration, which reveals a resistance to confinement and a hunger for autonomy. None of these are wrong, but they are distinct, and when you know which one drives a person, you understand how to support them, how to motivate them, and how not to suffocate them. Pay attention also to how quickly they answer. Fast answers usually indicate desires they have already rehearsed privately. Slow answers may suggest buried dreams or disconnection from desire altogether. Both are informative. Someone disconnected from desire may appear stable, but they often struggle with vitality, while someone with a clear inner pull often feels frustrated until they align with it. The content of their answer matters, but so does the scale. Do they dream locally or globally? Do they imagine personal fulfillment or collective change? Someone who dreams of fixing their small community will approach life differently than someone who dreams of changing systems. Again, neither is superior, but alignment matters. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that a person's worth is measured by what they devote their attention to, and this question reveals exactly where attention longs to rest when fear is removed. Also notice what they do not include. If relationships never appear in their answer, they may value independence over connection. If creativity never appears, they may prioritize structure and security. If contribution never appears, they may be focused on mastery or self-actualization. Absence speaks as loudly as presence. This question also reveals how they relate to risk. Some people dream cautiously, even when failure is removed. Others dream expansively. Cautiously dreaming may suggest deep responsibility or ingrained restraint. Expansive dreaming may suggest optimism or suppressed ambition. Again, not judgment, but clarity. What makes this question powerful is that it does not ask who they are. It asks who they would allow themselves to be if fear no longer negotiated every decision. And fear negotiates more than most people realize. Stoicism does not teach the elimination of desire. It teaches alignment with reasoned desire, the kind that serves virtue rather than impulse. And when you hear someone's answer, you can sense whether their desire is rooted in ego, avoidance, or contribution. Desires rooted in ego often seek status or admiration. Desires rooted in avoidance seek escape or comfort. Desires rooted in contribution seek meaning beyond the self. This distinction tells you how durable the desire is, because Ego fades, comfort plateaus, but meaning sustains. And when you understand someone's deepest desire, you understand how conflict will affect them, how success will satisfy or disappoint them, and why certain compromises feel unbearable to them while others feel trivial. This question is not about encouraging risk or fantasy. It is about recognizing direction, because direction determines fulfillment more than outcome. The Stoics believed that peace comes from living in accordance with one's nature and values, not from external success. And this question shows you whether someone is moving toward that alignment or away from it. Taken together, these 5 questions form a map. What energizes them, how they grow, what they value, how they act under pressure, and what they desire when fear is removed. This is not mind reading, it is attention, and attention is the rarest form of respect. When you truly understand these layers, conversation becomes connection, prediction becomes empathy, and relationships become intentional rather than accidental. Remember, the goal is not to extract information, but to recognize humanity, because when people feel deeply understood, they reveal themselves willingly. And that is the difference between control and connection, between manipulation and wisdom, between speaking and truly listening. At the end of all questions, all techniques, and all psychological insight, there is a simple truth the Stoics understood long before modern psychology gave it language. Understanding others is not about power, it is about harmony. And harmony begins the moment you stop trying to dominate outcomes and start honoring human nature as it is, not as you wish it to be. These 5 questions were never meant to turn you into a mind reader in the theatrical sense, nor were they designed to give you leverage over people, because leverage poisons connection the moment it appears. Their true purpose is clarity, and clarity is a form of peace. When you understand what energizes someone, how they grow, what they value, how they act under pressure, and what they desire when fear is removed, you are no longer guessing, projecting, or reacting blindly. You are responding with awareness, and awareness is the foundation of wisdom. The Stoics taught that most conflict does not arise from malice, but from misunderstanding, from people acting according to their nature while others misinterpret that nature as threat, indifference, or disrespect. When you ask better questions, you interrupt that cycle. You replace assumption with curiosity, judgment with observation, and emotional reaction with rational insight. This does not mean you excuse harmful behavior or abandon boundaries. Stoicism has never been about passive acceptance. It is about choosing your responses deliberately. When you understand someone deeply, you can decide clearly whether to draw closer, step back, collaborate, or disengage, and that decision will feel calm rather than conflicted. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that connection comes from similarity. In truth, connection comes from comprehension. You do not need to agree with someone's values to understand them, but without understanding, agreement is fragile, and disagreement becomes hostility. These questions allow you to see beneath surface identity, beneath roles, titles, moods, and defenses, into the consistent patterns that drive behavior over time. And patterns, not moments, reveal character. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act according to what seems good to them at the time. When you understand what good means in another person's inner world, their actions stop feeling random or personal. You may still choose not to tolerate them, but you will no longer be confused by them. That is freedom. There is also a quieter benefit to these questions, one most people overlook. Every time you ask them sincerely, you are training yourself. You are practicing patience instead of interruption, listening instead of waiting to speak, humility instead of performance. In other words, while you are learning about others, you are also refining your own character. Stoicism is not a philosophy of outward control. It is a discipline of inward mastery. The more you listen without agenda, the less reactive you become. The less reactive you become, the harder it is for others to disturb your peace. And peace, in Stoic terms, is not comfort, it is stability. It is the ability to remain grounded, regardless of praise or criticism, agreement or conflict. These questions help you cultivate that stability because they shift your focus from winning interactions to understanding reality. And reality, once seen clearly, loses much of its power to unsettle you. Use these questions slowly, not all at once, not like a checklist. Let them arise naturally in conversation, guided by genuine interest rather than technique. People can sense intention even when they cannot articulate it. If your intention is to connect, they will open. If your intention is to extract, they will close. Wisdom is felt before it is understood. Remember also that not everyone will respond deeply. Some people are not ready, some are guarded. Some have never been asked questions that invite reflection. Their resistance is not a failure of the method. It is information. And information, even when disappointing, is still clarity. The Stoic does not force depth. He respects timing. Finally, turn these questions inward. Ask yourself what energizes you, what beliefs you have outgrown, what values you wish governed human behavior, what decisions surprised you, and what you would do if fear loosened its grip. Self-knowledge precedes understanding others. When you know your own patterns, you are less likely to project them onto the world. When you know your own desires, you are less likely to resent others for following theirs. This is how wisdom compounds quietly, not through domination, but through alignment, not through control, but through comprehension. In a world obsessed with influence, choosing understanding is a radical act. It will not make you louder, but it will make you steadier. And in the long run, the steady mind outlasts the clever one.